official countdown. All right, guys, welcome back to Sarcastic Remarks. Along with Chris, my brother, I'm Brian. I actually said it right, correct this time, Chris, rather than the
Good
other
job.
time. I
It's
know,
very
yeah.
impressive.
Aren't you proud of me? I'm way better
Very.
than I was. All right, we've got a real treat for you guys today. So we actually have Saad Yousuf. Saad Yousuf is the staff writer for The Athletic for the Dallas Stars, and he's also a producer for The Ticket. And he's been around DFW sports for a while, so he's also covered the Cowboys, the Mavs, the Rangers, FC Dallas, and for numerous different different organizations. He's worked for WFAA, for a little bit for Mavs.com, and even some Dallas Morning News stuff, back to Mike Heika and doing all that stuff. So, Saad, welcome to the show.
Appreciate you guys having me. I'm looking forward to it. It's definitely a lot to talk about when it comes to the Stars right now.
Hopefully we can talk about more of the good stuff than the bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. My first thought was, especially after yesterday, I was just like, oh, goodness, there could not be a better time to have an interview right now based on that game yesterday. So, just give us just a rundown of your career, kind of where you've been, and how and why did you become a writer, and how did you come to write?
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, like I kind of the way I got into sports writing was really just in college. Like this wasn't something that I kind of grew up wanting to do. I grew up wanting to be a professional quarterback, so in the NFL. So that's kind of where it started. But then, once you find out that okay, I'm 5'6" and I'm not going to be able to do that for a lot more reasons than just my height. Then after that, like once I got into college, I was like, all right, like I still want to be in sports somehow. So took a class at UNT that's required by all undecided majors, and kind of came across sports journalism. A much longer story on just the whole journey, but just kind of went from there. Had my own little blog, covered the Mavericks every now and then. That's where my career really started, was covering the Mavericks, and then got a job at ESPN Dallas Radio at the end of my sophomore year at UNT. And then a year later, got a job part-time at the Dallas Morning News. And then 2 years after that, got the job at The Athletic covering, like you mentioned, all four teams in the Metroplex. And then 2 years after that, Sean moved on to the NHL business beat. Sean Shapiro, who covered the Stars, moved on to the NHL business beat, and I took over for the Stars. So that's the short version of how I kind of got to where I am right now in terms of my career.
Awesome. Pretty sweet. Yeah, I can totally relate with wanting to stay around sports while not being good at them. Yeah, so I just had a question. Have you been a Stars fan kind of for a while, or is this kind of something that you're kind of being pushed into by getting this job?
No, to be honest, like I mean, I watched casually growing up. I watched hockey when the Stars were in the playoffs or when the Stanley Cup Finals were on. I didn't religiously watch hockey. I mean, that was more football and basketball for me, to be honest with you. I've never been a Stars fan. I'm not currently, like, I'm not a Stars fan now. I just, I cover the team and I definitely enjoy doing it. I would say I'm a hockey fan for sure. I love hockey, love the sport. But yeah, I've never really, I think when you say you're a fan of something, it's more of like an emotional investment, right? And I don't really have, I wouldn't say I really have that. I always see a lot of times reporters will say they're not fans of the teams, and they'll be saying the truth. But I do want the Stars to win, but not because I'm a fan, but more because good stories come out of happy times. Like it's a lot better when I get to write about a Jake Ottinger shutout versus a meltdown in the third period, right? So like I root for them to win, but it's not because I'm a fan. So it's kind of like an interesting little dynamic there with how that works.
Yeah.
That's really interesting because, and I've realized this. We only started this podcast about uh, last August, Chris, right? I guess right when the return to play started, and it's kind of a different, feature because before the podcast, even if the stars were doing bad, I would just I'd turn it off, right? Because the stars were doing bad, and I would consider
Fair
myself.
weather.
Yeah, right, exactly. Fair weather fan, exactly. But especially with if they're doing good, then I loved it. But even now, it seems like when they're doing bad, I still have to watch them because I don't know, I still have that emotional attachment, like you're saying, and if you don't have that emotional attachment, it's a little bit easier to write for stuff. I feel like maybe that's just me, but
No, no, I agree. It is easier to evaluate things fairly when that happens. Now, that doesn't mean that, sometimes like certain emotional attachments don't happen. Like, like I think a good example of that actually was this season. Um, Not that I was emotionally attached or anything, but I was working on a story for a couple of weeks on Andrew Cogliano, and he was having he was having his wife was pregnant, and he was about to have a kid, and I talked to them a week or so before before the due date, and we talked about how important it was for them to stay clear of the coronavirus so that he could be in the room with her and everything like that. And they gave birth to their daughter the morning that the team had the COVID outbreak. So for me,
ooh,
just as a human, like I was working on that story, but I'm like, oh my gosh, like this just sucks for him as a person if he's not able to be there, which fortunately he was. But there is a human element to it. So like I'm not like if Andrew Cogliano has a bad game, I'm gonna say he has a bad game. So I'm not like I would say an irrational fan or anything. But when there's a human element involved in it, then you definitely feel that because I'm not a robot. So
right. But I do like that you said that because irrational fans, because especially after last night, there seemed to be a lot of irrational things said, and that's probably why you
From
did
you.
Yeah, yeah. Especially for me, I was very emotional last night when I did the when I did the podcast. So much so that I even put it up as our little sneak peek. But so all right, so let's go ahead and talk about that 3-2 win. We weren't even gonna talk about it really because it hadn't existed yet when we talked about doing this. But uh, I couldn't figure out what happened, so I'm just gonna ask you, and this is probably a loaded question. What happened last night?
well, the problem is that the offense and defense. First of all, the way the Stars play, the way that the system is, and I know a lot of people have an issue with the system, and I don't really have an argument, against that. Like I agree. I think there's certain flaws in the way that they play hockey. Now, I'm also not arrogant enough to say that I know hockey better than Rick Bowness does. That's just my opinion. You know, from afar, it looks like there are certain things they do that just don't work. And I think it's fair for any fan, any media member to say that. I always have this balance of playing coach from the couch, and for Rick Bowness, who's coaching in his fifth decade, you just have to kind of you just have to be mindful of how you approach things. Now, that doesn't mean that anyone's opinion is wrong. Like people that said that the Stars needed more defense when Lindy Ruff was the coach, they weren't wrong about that. So you know. I do agree, and so bringing it back to the 3-2 loss and everything like that. I think what you saw was a team that stopped playing aggressively offensively, and then it cost them defensively because all of a sudden you're on your heels. Hockey, I would say, as much as any sport, probably hockey and basketball especially, the offense and defense is very intertwined. It doesn't mean that you can, if your offense is great, your defense is going to be great, but depending on how you play offensively or how you play defensively, it translates to the other side as well. Like we see it in basketball. You make a bad pass offensively, it leads to a fast break dunk on the defensive end, right? So hockey's the same way. And so, when they stopped playing aggressively offensively, they weren't staying in the zone. They weren't playing well. That cost them on defense. And on Thursday, they didn't have a 34-year-old veteran making diving saves to bail them out. They had a 22-year-old rookie who, it wasn't completely his fault. He was just, he had some bad looks, and like maybe Anton Hudobin saved some of those, but you don't blame Jake Ottinger, I think, in a vacuum. Now I'm not saying he was flawless. Like sure, he could have played better down the stretch as well, but that's on the skaters, man. Like you can't allow your rookie goaltender to see the kind of shots he was seeing there down the end.
Yeah, that's exactly what we were talking about that game. Actually, we were saying if Hudobin's in, maybe he wins the game. But like that's the difference between Hudobin and Ottinger right now is Ottinger won't be the reason you lose the game. At least so far this season he hasn't been. But Hudobin might be the reason you do win. So that's what we've been talking about recently with the differences when people are talking about who to start, especially since Dobby didn't start for a while. But I also want to get a little bit more specific there. So in the post game press conference, you saw Bones kind of call out the veterans as like the main reason for that. So what do you think about that? Because me and Ryan also kind of talked to like maybe Bones got some blame there because we were thinking as couch coaches, we probably both would have called a timeout after that second goal. Opinions on that?
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I would have called a timeout too. And Bones was asked about that after the game, and he kind of explained it as, we needed the timeout at the end. And I'm like, I don't disagree that you needed the timeout at the end, but maybe you wouldn't have had that ending if you used the timeout at the beginning. Like, you needed the timeout at the end because you needed to tie the game up. Maybe if you call the timeout when it's 2-1, 2-2, you don't have to call that timeout at the end and draw up a play. So I think it was a bit of hindsight there, what Bones was saying. But yeah, I mean, look, I think people with Rick Bowness, and I'm not, again, I'm not like some homer or anything like that. I just think people have preconceived opinions of what Rick Bowness is and the system he plays, and I think a lot of people out there are quick to pounce on that when there are a lot of other reasons. And Rick Bowness is not perfect. There's a lot of flaws in the way that I think the Stars are playing overall, and the coach is never free of blame in that. But I mean, you got to look at other aspects of what's going on as well. What happened yesterday, aside from the timeout, which I agree, that's on the players. That's on players to do that. And Rick Bowness, he's smart enough to know that that the veterans, if he calls them out, it's not going to take a psychological toll. It's not going to do anything like that. If you start calling out your younger guys, you don't know how they're going to take it, if their confidence is going to get shot. Jamie Benn and Joe Pavelski, they're not worried about Rick Bowness in the media saying they need to pick it up. That's why yesterday those were the guys that were talking after the game in a loss, because those are the guys that know how to handle these kind of situations. So I think it's all very intentional. I don't think, but blame goes around everywhere. I think, it starts from the head coach, but it certainly goes down to the players.
I really like that point. That's a good point. You call out the veterans and not the young guys because of the way they might react. So, so let's talk about one of those young players. Chris and I have talked a little bit about Miro Heiskanen a little bit over the course of this season in some of our PGRs, and we don't think he's playing bad. Right, Chris? Would you say that's probably about right?
He's not playing bad, but he's not playing like Heiskanen is what I would say.
So I guess my question is to you is, does he look different than the Miro Heiskanen we saw in the bubble playoffs? And why does he look different?
Yeah, I do think he looks different. I think one of the main things with him is it's not. First of all, defensively, he does not look different. Defensively, he's everything that he's been.
Right.
He probably has the single best play of Stars hockey I've seen in my 3 years covering the team. That led
No
to
joke.
Pavelski's game-tying goal a couple of weeks ago or so. So, defensively, he's very much the same. And with Miro's defense, you always have to actually watch the game and see like how many times you can see a guy on the other team just racing down, looking like they're going to get a goal on the rush, and Miro just casually pokes the stick in there and just breaks it all up. I think his defense is great. Now, offensively, I think there's a few issues, and I think the main one is he's just not shooting enough. Like that is the biggest thing, and I mentioned it in an article that I wrote today about I've gotten a lot of questions about is Miro regressed or something like that, and here's the thing. Miro's in his third year. In his rookie season, he was taking 4.4 shots per game. Last season, that went up to 4.9 shots per game. Right now, he's at 2.9 shots per game. So he has
Wow.
basically cut that in half almost. And so the biggest thing is we if you don't shoot, you can't score. So that's the biggest thing, that he's just not shooting enough. And then when he is shooting, he's having I would say the opposite issue that John Klingberg always has. John Klingberg's issue when he is looking to shoot is he takes too long. He looks for the perfect pass, looks for the perfect play, and doesn't shoot enough. However, with Miro, he's shooting too quick, and his shots get blocked and don't make it to the net. So I think that is the issue that Miro is having right now.
Yeah, that's definitely what I've been saying, and then Ryan keeps saying there's got to be something different. I'm like, no, I don't think so. You just got to shoot the stupid puck.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about one of your articles, and I think this is one of your more articles you're more proud about because you got it pinned up at the top of your Twitter profile. So back kind of before you took over the job as the Stars beat writer for The Athletic, you wrote an article about Dobby entitled "The Russian Buddha." So I think that's absolutely awesome. But my question about that article, and you can answer it however you'd like, but what was it like following Dobby's journey as he became that NHL goaltender, and how much work did that article actually take, progressing over time?
Yeah, man. First of all, to watch stories like Anton's, it's always fun to just see those kind of things happen, because when everyone loves a good Cinderella story, and that's kind of what Anton's rise in Dallas has kind of been. He's been a journeyman. He's played for double-digit teams in his professional career, combining the NHL, AHL, and everything. So I think that's been a lot of fun. And then that story that took the week that I wrote it, that was basically the only thing that I worked on. It took probably about, I would say, a total of, I don't know, about 45 to 60 hours or so, if you combine just like everything of
Dang.
interview, because you got interviews, you transcribe all the interviews, then you have to go through and sort it all, and then there's the editing process with it. I would say it took probably around 40 hours, 40 to 50 hours or so. So yeah, it was a beast, and it got it done within 1 week, because obviously they're in the middle of a Stanley Cup playoff run, and you want to get it out in that time. So yeah, that was a really fun one though, and Anton's a character where it works, because you can't write that kind of story on everyone, because not everyone's wearing UGG boots in the Florida heat and things like that. So that's just kind of the way it was.
Anton is quite a character, and I think he ever since, and I would argue ever since Roussel left and he left for Vancouver, we've needed one of those character guys that we could look at, and Dobby has definitely been that, and it's been so much fun watching him play.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I had a few more questions just about kind of your perspective. So you kind of showed that you're not you wouldn't technically consider yourself a Stars fan, and as someone who is like definitely super deep into like the Stars fan community, I was kind of wondering like what's kind of the outside perspective of Stars fans.
For me, it's the most passionate fan base. I mean, it's really awesome. Like, actually, I was on the ticket. I was filling in for Mike Soroy in the producer chair, and we were talking about that actually just Friday morning. So, Stars fans are not high in number, if you look at Dallas, look, this is going to be a football town. The Cowboys are going to rule the sports world in Dallas. I don't think anyone would dispute that. But the Stars fan base is just so, it's the vocal minority. Like, I mean, the Stars fans are loud. They care about the team. They're passionate. It's a lot of fun to, I mean, if you follow me on Twitter, then you know that, like, I take that part of my job very seriously of kind of making watching games a communal aspect. Like, I'm live tweeting and having fun. Like, my written work on The Athletic is very different than my Twitter feed, and that's very intentional because, I like to have fun with the Stars fan base because the Stars fan base is fun. And then, when I turn to The Athletic to write my work, that's when I have my professional hat on. So, the Stars fan base is just a lot of fun just to interact with and watch sports with, and that's kind of what sports are all about.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that you tweet like a Stars fan. I'll give you that.
I know what gets the traction.
Right.
Yeah, the Dickinson stuff recently has been fantastic. Spot on.
Man, poor guy,
All
man.
right.
His face. I don't know what it's gonna be.
It's
like.
hilarious.
Man, it's almost like he's got like a magnet on his face, like a rubber magnet on his face that attracts pucks.
And then he
vulcanized
breaks a
rubber.
board last game. What is wrong with this dude?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's a good point that you brought that up, Chris. Let me ask him about that. I almost forgot about that. So Chris said that the biggest. I guess we're back to the Florida game again, right? Chris said that the biggest turning point in the game, in his opinion, was when the boards broke, and when I guess Florida had a chance to
Regroup.
regroup and think about their thoughts and what they needed to do. But I kind of argued on the flip side that the Stars still should have come out of that.
I agree with you. I'm just saying that's when it happened.
Right. So do you think that was the big turning point in the game, or was there a different aspect of the game that caused it to go so south like that?
No, I mean, it's hard to dispute that was the turning point because that's just kind of what happened. I mean, they played differently. Now, why that was the turning point? I mean, did Florida just regroup, momentum stopped, whatever the case may be? That's a whole different story. But yeah, for sure. I mean, to me, it felt like that it felt like that Ravens 49ers Super Bowl when the lights went out.
Yeah.
It's like it was two different games before the lights went out and they didn't, and like that's how it felt with the Stars on Thursday against the Panthers, where before. Now you can't blame the boards though. I mean, not like that.
Yeah, right.
But there's no denying that at that point in the game is where the tide changed. And that's nobody's fault. Like, that's not the Panthers didn't do that or nothing. That's like, there's no excuse for that. But yeah, that's definitely, I think, where the game changed for the Stars.
Yeah, I said it was a conspiracy. I joked about it and said that Florida intentionally knew that those boards were going to be broken.
It's kind of weird that you added that into your statements.
All right, so can we let's talk about the insane schedule that the Stars have got over the course of the next 2.5 months. So before the two pauses even happened, first the weather in Dallas, and then the outbreak at training camp, it was already going to be a hard schedule. How will the next 42 games, and I think it's like 74 days or 73 days now, or however many it is, how is that going to affect the Stars over the course of the rest of the season?
Well, the biggest thing is obviously going to be fatigue and health, right? And that's going to be the biggest X factor. The other thing is, I've seen a lot of Stars fans get really irritated with young player deployment, right? Like Ty Dellandrea hasn't played in a couple of games, and that upsets a lot of people. Like, look, Ty Dellandrea is a part of this team. He's a part of the present. He's a part of the future. He's everything, right? So But when you talk about the schedule, that's what's going to happen. You're going to have to rotate through on the bottom six, especially because well, ideally you'd want to rotate through evenly, but right now the Stars offensively can't afford to not have Joe Pavelski play if he's able to play. Like, he needs to be out there if he can be out there. Um, you're already down Alexander Radulov. You're down Rope Hintz. Tyler Sagan's out for a while. Like, you don't have time. You're veterans, and I say that with air quotes. It's crazy that Rope Hintz is already a veteran because that's where he's counted on this team, right? Like, he's counted to be that kind of guy. So I think it's really important that you're going to see the guys like Ty Dellandrea, like Les Bronze, Nick Camano. Those kind of guys are going to be the ones that are kind of Rhett Gardner, Tanner Caro. Those are the guys that are going to kind of go through a rotation, and that's a product of the schedule. Like, I think I don't think that would be happening in a normal season right now. Like, I think it would be there would be 12 to 14 players that would be in a solid rotation. Instead, there's going to be about 16 players who are going to have to rotate through and through. And so that's going to be the struggle that the Stars are going to have to juggle with. And really, it's about treading water until you can get some of those bigger names back. And that's what the Stars need to do.
Yeah, that's exactly what I've been saying. So, like, we've talked about from other media personnel talking about when Bishop and Sagan come back, like that could feel like a big trade late in the season. Do you kind of agree with that?
Yeah, I think more with Sagan than Bishop. I think Ben Bishop is the best goalie on this roster for sure, but I don't think his absence has been felt as much because Anton has been. He started out really well, and now he's playing incredible. He had the 4-game slump in the middle there, but then Jake Ottinger. I don't know how you can say he has not exceeded expectations. Like, I think he has. I mean, like, he has one regulation loss, and that was the third period meltdown. The 2 Chicago games he lost 2-1 in overtime. He's been incredible. So, I think that's why Ben Bishop's absence maybe hasn't been felt that much. No doubt it's going to be a big boost when he does return. But Tyler Sagan, yeah, they could use Tyler Sagan right now. They can use Alexander Radulov right now. So those are the ones that are really going to be a welcome return when that happens.
Absolutely. As long as we hang around, as long as we get in the playoffs, that's all we need to do, in my opinion. All right, I think we got about one more question for you, and this is something that you've been talking about a lot recently, about how the Stars have like one of the highest scoring chance percentages in the league, and like crazy low amounts of goals compared to that. So, like, what do we got to do to, like, bury those? Is it really just shoot more, like the same with Heiskanen?
It's also shooting more, and it's also just, I mean, like, I think some of them, it's not even like, it's not like, even when they get their shots off sometimes, it's just wide or just a little bit, a little high or something like that. And look, those kind of things happen in hockey games. We see, remember, was it last year? Time all runs together. It was last year, like last season or 2 seasons ago, when it looked like Tyler Sagan was hitting the post more than anything else. And those kind of things are going to happen. But you just have to. I remember there was a game. I think it was against Chicago late, where Rope Hintz had a wide open net with like 30 seconds left in the game, and that would have won it for them, and he just missed. And I don't know if that's just kind of calming down a little bit or something like that. And again, as somebody who's never played hockey, like, who am I to tell Rope Hintz to chill out? Or, but like, but at the same time, like, something has to change there, where things are you're being there. There's a very fine balance of being reckless and being just being a little too chill. We've talked about this the most with John Klingberg. Like, he needs to just shoot, because when he shoots, good things happen. And so, like, there's a balance there that all these players have to come through. But you're right, and that's where the irritation, I think, comes with the scoring chances, is that they're there, but the team isn't converting. And it'd be a whole different sense of frustration if it just wasn't there. Like, then you're just like, you know what? Can this season? It's over. Which, by the way, a lot of Stars fans already have. But but then
It's not over.
but then you could actually do that and say, you know what, there's just nothing here. The problem is you've lost 9 games. 8 of them have essentially been 1-goal losses. The scoring chances are there, and that's why this is all more frustrating that they can't put it together.
Yeah.
Well, and you mentioned that the scoring chance probability and how high it is. That's without, 3 of our top 6 forwards in the roster right now. And, there's no Radulov, no Sagan, no Hintz. And now Radulov and Hintz have kind of been – well, Hintz has been more in and out, and Radulov has been in, but Sagan hasn't been in this whole season. So that's with a bunch of our, quote-unquote top 6 forwards being out. All right.
Yeah.
I've actually got one more question for you, and it's the most important question of all. Okay.
All right.
So, I noticed that on Twitter for each game you put up an Office GIF.
Right.
So and Chris is a huge Office fan too. I like The Office, but he is more diehard. So I got to ask you. Yeah, he likes
Parks and Rec more.
Oh,
yeah, he likes Parks and Rec more, but he likes The Office too. So I gotta ask you, what's your favorite scene or like favorite episode of The Office?
Well, favorite episode. There's only one right answer. Like, I know it sounds like it's an opinion question, but actually, I take that back. There's two. And you could go either way, but it's only these two. It's either Dinner Party or it's Stress Relief, and those are the 2 best episodes on the show. And when it comes to scenes, there's a lot of really good ones. I think the most underrated character is Creed, and any scene that involves Creed is usually a good one. The cold open with the fire drill definitely is obviously one of the top ones. So yeah, I mean, I think with scenes, there's a lot more flexibility for me. With the episodes, I think it's either Dinner Party or Stress Relief, and I don't really know the case that someone could build to me. And look, I'm on my 20th rewatch literally right now. I've watched it 19 times. I'm on my 20th rewatch,
gosh.
and I literally after I watched it for the 7th or 8th time or something, I watch it every time now, watching for one specific thing, one specific storyline or angle. So I've kind of almost studying The Office at this point more than watching it. But when I do that, it's just you see certain things Dinner Party and Stress Relief stand out every single time. Scott's Tots and the toast at the wedding are the 2 most awkward moments of the entire show. It makes you cringe whether you're watching it for the first time or the 13th time. All the same when Jim accidentally lets it slip that Pam's pregnant, and Scott's Tots. So those are kind of just my little opinions. That obviously it's a TV show. I'm not serious that those are the only right answers, but that's just kind of the conclusion I've come to.
Well, man, and especially Dinner Party. That is the most cringiest. Every time I watch it, I'm just like, oh gosh, it makes me want to turn it off because of how cringy.
I have to look away.
I know, yeah, I do too. Yeah. All right. Saad, thank you for agreeing to do this. We appreciate your time and agreeing to do this. Where can Stars fans find your work?
Yeah, so like you said, I have I'm on Twitter at Saad Yousuf 126 for excessive tweeting and bad tweets. I don't take Twitter too seriously, so I'm if you follow me on Twitter like you guys do, and then at The Athletic, that there's a very strong distinction in how it works. So if lighthearted stuff is more your thing, then I'm on Twitter. If not, then subscribe to The Athletic, and you can follow my more sophisticated professional work there.
Yep, and once again, I highly encourage all of you, if you so desire, to go and get a subscription to The Athletic. Saad does a great job, but they've also got, Sean's now on the national side, so he's doing all the business-related stuff for The Athletic. And there's just great stories left and right, not just with the NHL, but with sports in general. So thanks again, Saad, for joining us. Chris, you got anything to say before we close this out?
Thanks, Saad. You got a voice for radio.
Appreciate it, guys.
All right, guys. Thank you all for joining us. This has been along with Ryan. I did it again, Chris. along with Chris, I'm Ryan. You can follow us on Starcastic R on Twitter. You can also follow us on Instagram at Starcastic Remarks Podcast and like us on Facebook. And subscribe to our YouTube channel where we put all of our stuff, our PGRs, our interviews, and all that great stuff. We'll be back with you guys again tomorrow night when the Stars take on the Tampa Bay Lightning. And I believe that's an evening game, but don't hold me to it. And we'll catch you guys on the flip side. Thank you guys for tuning in.
Bye.